All right, so here we are, day 172,
Three? Somewhere around there.
3 of lockdown, and we're revisiting the lore of the last couple videos, and we gotta say something. It needs to be said. It's a bit of a mess right now.
Yeah. I think Blizzard and the Warcraft team gave just about as good a sort of capstone as you can give to what you might call the first 20 years of the Warcraft story.
Yeah.
And they gave us the Legion expansion pack, which just had, was overflowing with content, gave us a ton of lore, a ton of story.
You're being very positive right
And
now.
full culmination to, I think Sargeras and the Burning Legion has sort of always been the big bad boogeyman, even though, we have sort of the old gods and the void lords above him. He was sort of always the big bad guy that we were fighting. And we killed him.
Yo, we took a good job, us.
We knocked him out. He's in prison somewhere out in space.
And then the weirdest thing happened. Another game came out.
Strangely enough, we end our story and a new game comes out. But I think this comes down to maybe our biggest problem with what Blizzard has done since Legion is you had an opportunity here to sort of close the book on sort of this first volume of the Warcraft universe.
Yeah.
And really start us off with a sort of a new book of lore, the next chapter, the next book in the Warcraft series. But instead instead of turning outward to build up a new story, even using a lot of the things that they've already established, they sort of went inward and just ended up rehashing a lot of old things that have been done over and over again.
It's so bad. Just the number of things that were done, I think, between Battle for Azeroth and the promo material that we've got right now for Shadowlands, that could have been done by like my 13-year-old cousin, is. And I know that's mean, right? I'm sure
your 13-year-old cousin's really smart.
It's someone's job up there to do this stuff. But I think we should rewind. Let's rewind, right? So the Burning Legion shows up, led by Sargeras, whose whole job was to fight against the bad, the void bad, unknown, evil,
The darkness, the void lords,
yeah,
the old god,
Lovecraftian,
Lovecraftian, yeah,
it's a little Lovecraftian,
eldritch horror,
which is fine. It's the you can really boil it down to like the unknown, scary versus like civilization and order, and so it's very like light side, dark side. Just like at the end of the day, you have these bigger concepts that are represented by things.
So Sargeras is not the actual end-all be-all of the Warcraft universe, right? They've established this.
Yes,
He's only trying to
He was made
stop them.
to fight the bad stuff. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and then he determined that they were so strong and bad that the only way to fight them is to destroy everything, so they have nothing to corrupt.
Very flood-like.
Very flood-like.
That's how we kill the flood. So Sargeras is the halo of this
The
universe.
Master Chief.
I guess
No, the Halo. That's correct.
the Burning Crusade is the halo of it.
Yes. There you go.
But okay, so goes from world to world, does his stuff, eventually gets beaten by humanity. Well, I guess
Azerothite.
Azeranity.
Azeranity, exactly.
He drops his sword. He gets imprisoned back inside of the
Outer
Pantheon
space, yeah.
with the super Colossus gods,
The Titans.
the Titans. And then Illidan's like, "Yo, I'm gonna take care of this dude." We're all caught up.
Yeah, that's the end of Legion.
We're all
And a nice cap. We close the book on, like I said, the first 20 years or so of Warcraft.
Okay, so we beat the first big bad, right? And this has happened a million times in I don't know, video games, anime, whatever. Like, you beat the big bad, but actually I was behind him the whole time, pulling the strings, doing stuff. It works. People do it because it works, right? And so if you're gonna have like an interim villain or something, then you need to not waste the viewer's time. So I think fundamentally, a lot of BFA feels like they were wasting my time. And let's do it step by step. Okay. So Jairus goes, he drops his sword into the world, there's this new material now, Azeroth, that everybody's like gangbusters about. And they're like, let's get this. And then that sort of sparks the conflict between the two factions again. And now we've got this other thing where Sylvanas burns down Darnassus. Which, again, at the time everybody was like really into like, oh man, like why is she doing this? Is she possessed? Is she just a good leader? Like everybody else was just dicking around with this war for the last forever, right? And now that's compelling. That is a compelling point of like, have we just been wasting time doing all this other stuff when there's actually a war? And like when they nuked that harbor, like was that just like what you should be expecting? Because everything else is sort of just like this fun little like.
Well, it's like it's a little bit like Watchmen, right? Spoiler alert, if you're ever going to read a 30, 40-year-old comic.
The thing is now when you talk, people think you mean the show.
Oh, that's true. I'm talking about the old comic.
The old comic.
The old comic, the Soviet Union and America are on the brink of the Cold War turning hot and nuking the hell out of each other. So the smartest man alive, Ozymandias, instead fabricates this giant extraterrestrial
squid thing
to scare everyone on Earth. And because we've got this big external threat, Russia and America become friends again to fight the aliens, right? And it worked. He averted nuclear war. That's sort of what the Warcraft lore has always been about, periods of hot war between the Horde and the Alliance, which then when something bigger comes out, they end up forming a tenuous alliance to overcome it and then go back to war. We had the war, and then we had to go to Draenor and work together to fight Illidan. We had to go to Northrend together to fight Arthas.
This is more important.
Then Pandaria, Cataclysm, there's bad stuff that happens. Then Pandaria, the war becomes hot again. We're fighting on a new battlefront. And then, more stuff happens, leading us all the way to Legion, where we're once again united, and the war is cold, but now Legion's over, and it's time for the war to get hot again.
Yeah, it's so that right there, I'm interested. I think that's a good hook. I think that, whether the Azerite is the vehicle for it or whatever, it makes sense now that let's finally focus on this and let's start burning shit down. Let's get rid of capital cities. I actually really like that.
And that's what made Pandaria compelling, I think, because the war felt like it had real stakes. You had Theramore, which is a zone that's been around all the way back to vanilla or BC.
Right.
All of a sudden it's gone, and it says, oh wow, this, we are actually in fact in a world of Warcraft.
Yes.
Not a world of working together craft.
A world of best friendship until we fight the pandas craft. You missed the scene where
they were working together
ally
to fight
the orc the weapon against the panda man. So where I think things started to really just sort of veer is that BFA wasn't very good, right? You played it, I played it for quite a bit. I was certainly interested to play because Legion was a blast.
Yes.
I really liked some of the stuff that they did. They tried to mix in PvP in a more interesting way. I think the islands could have been really cool if that had all been done differently. I think that ultimately they failed to continue the story notes that began with Sylvanas burning down Darnassus. So like shit's real right now, and we're actually talking about the conflict between the two. Okay, well let's make the entirety of this thing like raids setting up bunkers on docks. Like they could have really gotten into how many games you played where you stormed the beaches of Normandy, right? They could have really gotten into, okay, well here's where the enemy's stronghold is, here's where Sylvanas is set up, or here's where Anduin is set up. We're gonna set up these strongholds, and that'll be the quest chain. Going down into the water to hang out with Lady Vash was bonkers to me.
So Battle for Azeroth, in its name and its premise, promised us sort of the hottest war we've ever had between the two factions, right? They built it up to be we no longer have a common enemy, so this is, we're going back to Warcraft 3. This is, or even Warcraft 2, rather.
It's the point.
Yeah, this is orcs and humans, Horde and Alliance,
and
finally going at it, and all their friends, but finally, the war is hot again. We're fighting over this magical resource, as most wars in actual Earth history have been fought over.
It's magical resource.
And it's believable, right? So, as I said, Legion gave us this massive outer world culmination that we've been united to fight for 20 years, but now we're back here, left alone in our playpen, and we're fighting over the same blocks, which makes a lot of sense. And
we care about those characters, right?
We care about those characters.
Sylvanas and everybody else is gone, so I've got, or sorry,
Sargeras,
everybody else is going now, so like that big part of me is done. But like through the journey, I've been here with Jaina and the various Horde chiefs, right? And Anduin and his just rolling deep posse.
And so we've got all these characters.
Pet dog Rover.
And Rover and Greymane. Rover Greymane, exactly. But so we all care about these characters, and I think the biggest flaw of Battle for Azeroth is that once again we have a villain, right? In Mist of Pandaria, Garrosh was a villain.
Right.
He gradually, over several expansions, went from a noble orc to the Hitler of the Warcraft world. And so obviously, everyone who considers himself a good or even morally neutral character has to turn against him because he's just straight up evil. So it's no longer Alliance versus Horde. It's Alliance are the good guys, Horde who rebel against the Autocrat are the good guys, and then we take out the Autocrat. And at the end of the day, it was the Horde who were sort of the bad guys. Battle for Azeroth.
If I can make a quick point there. Every time they do that story, because now it seems like they're doing it more than once, it is kind of a middle finger to Horde players, right? Because like Blizzard goes on about class fantasy and how important that is, but like faction fantasy is the very first choice that you make when you play this game. It's just like, which side of this thing am I going to click? So to constantly be like, well, the humans are good. Like, like the Alliance is
the non-humans are,
and the Horde can't figure this shit out for the life of them. They just can't get find it. Is such an FU to like Native Americans are represented by the Tauren, and they're peaceful and they're in tune with everything. So please continue.
I mean, it's a great point, but they once again made Sylvanas this sort of monolithic villain. She's not a leader of a nation at war, as Anduin is, right?
As again, and they were starting down this path. They were starting down, like, she burned down Darnassus, which super evil, whatever, but like good, but warmanship.
Again, at the beginning of that expansion, she wasn't coming around saying, I'm burning down Darnassus as an FU to the Night Elves. They ended up sort of portraying it as that, and it was an act of rage or whatever. But her original plan was, I'm going to make a strategic strike on a capital city so I can end the war quickly.
Right.
Which is something that's happened throughout the history of warfare in the real world,
It's just what you do. Every single time in the past, they've gotten to like are we gonna kill the Horde now? The humans have been like, no, we're gonna let them go. Like the Horde exists by the Alliance's rules, which that is the same as being controlled. Like that's like a dictatorship. The guy ultimately like decides whether or not you live or die is the dude in charge of you.
Absolutely. Right. So again, we get to Battle for Azeroth. We're promised this great war, and instead we start there, but then they gradually build it off. Oh no, Sylvanas is just being evil and using the Horde. Great. So then we get into these weird-ass patches which take us totally away from the war, and we go underwater and destroy the old gods.
Adventures together.
We'll get there later. What I think that this expansion should have been is an actual, full-scale, compelling war between the two factions where there's not a good guy, not a bad guy.
Yeah.
It's just two factions fighting over resources, which, again, that's what most wars in human history have been about, ultimately. So you just have Alliance and Horde going at each other, fighting in old capital cities, and it's really, that's what the whole expansion is. You can have that same initial patch where you're exploring Borealis and Zandalari Troll World, and sort of building up your forces, but then instead of having the follow-up patches being going underwater to fight the old Naga and all that, the patches should be about, okay, we're taking this whole fight to Orgrimmar, to Stormwind, to Ironforge, and all of a sudden all the old capital cities are our new raids and stuff.
The Siege of Undercity was cool as
Absolutely.
hell. Like the dudes dying of poison and fleeing, and then Anduin doing his shit, and then Jaina shows up in the cinematic, right?
Yeah.
And it's cool. It's really cool.
And the stakes are high. It's a place that, a lot of us have been playing in since Vanilla came out back in like 04, 05.
Yeah.
So we care about it. And it's really cool to see, the story affecting the world again.
And I want to see the players do I want to see Anduin do awesome stuff. Like, that's what I come here for.
And instead, we end up sort of fighting these skirmishes in these two new islands. And then, again, once again, Sylvanas turns out to be the bad guy, and we go on to unify and fight another threat. If instead you have an entire expansion pack, again, we've just done the grandiose. We've gone to outer space and slain the evil Sargeras. Now let's take it back in, make it I'll say human conflict, but I guess a mortal conflict in terms of it's representing all these different races. And then the whole expansion pack is about warfare. We bring in these new allies. First patch is the Alliance is now going to assault Thunder Bluff.
Yeah.
And the Horde is going to assault Ironforge.
So cool.
And they're the good guys. There are no good guys or bad guys because both sides are committing atrocities in some theaters.
It's a war.
Yeah.
And I know the first thing is we need new cities and stuff, whatever. I get all that, but I get really excited for the gameplay opportunities that you just opened up, right? Because now I've got the actual chance to work a little bit of player versus player, faction versus faction into the game, right? If you're taking Thunder Bluff, then the developers could go anywhere from the old school raids of the capital cities that people do all the time to the very cut and dry 40-man raids that they do right now that are PvE. You could have some people come in from the other side. You could have your progress in doing those things do like a server-wide who's winning the war right now. There's so much that brings to the table. Getting people really involved, we can't let the Horde win this one. And I know there's mispopulation and stuff, but you can deal with all that.
And they tried to touch on it. They had the war fronts, which were cool initially, and they had all the sort of war daily quests outside. But again, then they just drop all of that so we can go fight the old gods.
Oh,
which
okay.
we'll get to.
We'll
but
get there.
Again, the old gods deserve their own expansion. You could have filled an entire expansion with 2 or 3 major patches with simply the conflict between the Horde and the Alliance.
Right. So okay.
So that's Battle for Azeroth as it should be.
Yes. So let's take the step back. So for Act 2 of WoW, Warcraft, you can't have the uber villain, or you can't have this conflict between the two just be Sylvanas being evil and Anduin being good in perpetuity. We need an actual big thing that we need a bad guy, right? So let's relook at Battle for Azeroth in context of setting up a bad guy for the entirety of this act. So, you brought up Dragon Boy.
Wrathion, the Black Dragon Prince, who, again, this is important because back in Mists of Pandaria, he was all like, okay, I'm making friends with these world leaders. I want your faction to win, whether it's Alliance or Horde, because I know what's coming is going to wipe out Azeroth. But what I see is going to happen is one faction destroys the other, and because of that, that single faction is actually able to become so much more powerful because it's united all of Azeroth and can then defend against whatever is coming from the outer world.
Right, and there's a thing that's so strong that it corrupted Sargeras. So there's something there, right? Yeah. I think that in the final patch for BFA, there should have been an addition of a raid that was the go kill Anduin or go kill Sylvanas.
And again, this is assuming that we don't go underwater to fight the Naga. No. We don't fight N'Zoth in the Black Empire. No. This is just, we've only been at war, Horde and Alliance, steadily escalating over the course of the expansion.
Setting up supply lines, maybe taking down Thunder Bluff and stuff. And again, cool gameplay mechanics to go with that. Maybe people starting there have some difficulty, and so more experienced players need to come and flush out the allies who are invading Thunder Bluff. There's some cool stuff you could have done. Anyway, so you finally siege whatever position the faction leader has fortified themselves into, and their whole team is there. And so you get this awesome fight, really, where you're fighting against all of the people that we've seen in cinematics nonstop for the past, I don't know, decade.
20 years.
Yeah, right? And you get to fight against them with some counterpart helping you out. So if you're fighting the vampire guy, help me out.
vampire guy?
Sylvanas is second in command.
Oh, Nathanos Blightcaller, Nathanos.
You're fighting Nathanos, right? But you're doing it with Gen at your side, like and you're doing the sort of like Maiev, Illidan thing that we saw way back in the day. We went to BC, but when it's finished, when you finally finish this fight, we get this cinematic where we see that the war outside is dying down because the men are dying. They're evenly matched. They're fighting to the last. Inside, all these leaders who are squaring up against each other, they're running out of steam too, right? And whoever your respective leader is, they bloody themselves, deliver some terrible mortal blow to the enemy, right? So maybe Anduin finally just snaps Sylvanas' neck. Just give, or he stabs her through the heart or something.
And meanwhile, in Stormwind Throne Room, you've got all the faction leaders there. Like you said, Gen and Mekator,
yes,
and the Three Hammers are all there fighting. Whoever's on the Horde side.
That would be so cool.
They're all these guys. So it's really all these like 20 characters that we've invested all this time in one room together.
That's all people want, right? And like Jaina doing badass stuff with her new pirate magic, which I'm crazy about. And as this like Pyrrhic victory, this crowning triumphant moment of the battered men being like, was it even worth it? He's killing. And Anduin has this look of like pain in his eyes, and everybody's looking at him, and everybody's like, we're dying. Time freezes, right? And everybody just watches as this creature walks out, and it takes a sword and drives that through Anduin, right? And then every single one of these leaders begin to dissolve in this weird mist, right? And he puts out his hand, and all of them become collected, right? And you see, at this moment, Dragon Boy, Wrathion busts down the door, and he's like, "Oh no, I'm too late. I'm too late for this thing," right? And humanity and orc humanity weakened, not ready for this, right? The entire world looks on in despair as all of the world leaders are captured by this creature, this terrible thing from beyond the void, I should say. And the world itself starts to sunder, right? If we're gonna talk about void happening, I want to talk about like Escher, like staircases going into doors that open up over there. I think we're talking about the fabric of existence coming apart because the void is its nothingness. It's the space between worlds. And so at this exact moment, we've got Magni sitting at his magic computer, right? He's FaceTiming with Illidan right now. he's like, how are my fellow god friends?
My Titanborn,
my Titan boys,
my boys,
and then he's got like world heart connections to all of these like thousands of different world hearts, world souls across the universe, and all of them just start blinking out, just disappearing. They go dark, right?
His LTE went out.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, the FaceTime, the Zoom cuts out, right? He's what's going on? And then the voice comes on and it's like, cannot establish communications with other things. And then he's like, oh no. And he steps outside, he looks up in the sky, and the entire world is being enveloped in this void prism. The sky gets blotted out, the stars are gone, right? We are truly alone. Right now, this void dude, he's got all these souls, he's got exactly what he wants. He just marches out of there. And some throne of void rises up above the entire world, and we get shots of all across Azeroth, terrible shit happening, right? Like over in Forsaken Lands, the dead start pouring out because shit's broken. Up in Northrend, the entirety of the Lich King's army just like crumbles to dust. Like he's there, but he becomes completely neutered, or even they turn against him, right?
Yes.
You can riff on the void theme so much more than just like the tentacle creatures that they've done. Yeah. There's a lot you can do here, and I think that is how they set up for the expansion.
And that's because, again, if the first act of Warcraft's history is about defeating Sargeras himself in his mind was a hero saving the universe from the Void Lords. He's no longer here to hold them back. So all of a sudden, the main villain of Act 2 is the Void Lords. And who do we have waiting this whole time? Someone that, if I'm Blizzard, I can either throw him in on a single patch and destroy him, or again, I have N'Zoth, the final remaining old god, who, you know, I think any normal person would say, let's make this the big baddie of a full Void expansion. Let's not throw him in as a single patch villain.
I think we're gonna. It's gonna be interesting to see what they make Sylvanas' benefactor.
Who's that?
Who is that?
Yeah.
Right? Because it could have been N'Zoth. I think we're all in agreement that it could have been N'Zoth.
And again, if N'Zoth was the guy who puts his dagger into Anduin's back, steals the souls of all of these faction leaders, and then, you know, what is Shadowlands would be this other expansion or it could be called Shadowlands. Broken Lands, I don't know.
Shattered Lands.
You're basically giving us another cataclysm where instead of making a ton of new zones, you sort of just rewrite the map. And instead, we've got this Azeroth that is broken and consumed by Void. The factions have both been decimated due to the war, and now N'Zoth.
People you used to know are going crazy. NPCs that you leveled up with are losing their minds, or you know, their friends and family are transforming. Their farm is upside down.
The horrific visions that we saw, we warped to a Void-infused Stormwind. That's the actual expansion. All of Azeroth has just been totally messed up, and N'Zoth won.
Yeah.
He's sitting on the throne.
Yeah.
I, as a player, I no longer have Anduin or Gen or Thrall to lead me. They're gone. So all of a sudden, you know, we lost the war. We're the resistance now.
Yeah, and you can frame this as this, you know, like 10,000 year plan. Right, because the void, they got time. That's all they've got, and they've been like, you know, why do you think there's been war on Azeroth since time immemorial? Like,
waiting for me.
Like,
I've been waiting.
I corrupt people. That's what I. That's why you guys are always fighting. And I know it's not helpful right now to be like, okay, well, here's how this thing should have gone. But I think that continuing this conversation gets us some way into what Shadowlands should look like. Should have, but also should going forward,
yes.
Right? Because standing here where we are, going into this new Shattered Lands, you feel that we have lost. You know, we actually get this terrible feeling of like, we need to protect Azeroth. You know, all of the like, you can't kill Arthas and Sylvanas. Like, this is crazy. Like, they've really shaken things up.
Yeah.
The world is messed up because we just burned down a bunch of stuff. Humanity's at its most dire, and then you do the reveal where the broken remnants of the Alliance are shattered, weeping over their wounds, their destroyed cities, and they hear this voice, and Uther calls out from beyond the Pale of Death. And he's like, I don't know what I'm seeing, but it can't be the Alliance losing heart. I don't know where I am, why I'm here. I shouldn't be here. I remember dying, but this isn't the Alliance that I died for. Right? Because on the other side of this veil that's been shattered, the spirits of the past can now see us. Right? And they guide us. They are what bring us to restoring everything, putting them back where they are, right? You know, Uther obviously wants things to go back to him. Maybe on the Horde, you know, some terrible leader reaches back and they want to break everything even more. They want to usurp and take over this new Void throne and, you know, come back to life. But
Vol'jin comes back for the Horde, just as Uther does for the Alliance, right?
Yes, that would be
the spirit.
That is exactly what should happen.
Yeah.
That is exactly, because Vol'jin didn't really get a shot to begin with.
And he was the best war chief we've ever had.
That would be such a good, yes, right. So then Vol'jin is, and so we once again put aside everything, but like we're guided by these characters without us going to the other side and cheapening their deaths and being like, well, everybody lives forever as souls.
So here's the biggest problem with Shadowlands, in my opinion, and it happened with Warlords of Draenor, right? In my mind, the biggest strength of the Warcraft universe is not even necessarily just the lore, the story they've created, it's actually the characters. As we said, They have spent 20 years creating these characters that we care so much about. We watch these cinematics with Sourfang.
It's true.
And you cry, right? It's these great characters you connected with. And these great characters, over the course of time, have died, and they've gone away. And so what did we do when we went to Draenor? We went back in time to get fan service and see old characters who had died long ago.
Right.
And that cheapened their death.
Yeah, it didn't really matter.
And it made it a side story. We're not even on Azeroth anymore. We're out in fake history Draenor. And so it cheapened everything, and it made it just a little side adventure, a Christmas special. And we're doing the same thing. We're going into the Shadowlands. We're leaving Azeroth once again. We're going into the Shadowlands. The stakes are low because I don't give a shit about the Shadowlands. I'm going to go be reintroduced to all these characters that I've either killed or watched fight beside me and die. And once again, their death is cheapened because, I'm hanging out with them again. They were just chilling in the Shadowlands this whole time. And whereas what you mentioned, if instead, a few spirits returned from beyond the veil back to an Azeroth, which we've been fighting to hold on to the last vestige of order in Azeroth, again, the stakes are as high as they possibly can be. We've done everything. Fought the Lich King, fought the Burning Legion, fought against the old gods to save Azeroth. And
this was always the threat that was lurking.
Exactly.
It was destruction of our world because of this thing.
Exactly. And we lose. We're on this last ramparts of order, fighting against the darkness. And in that moment, the honored dead return because of the tear in the void, the shenanigans caused by the void. And they lead us because Anduin and Sylvanas and Gen are all missing.
Right. And we've seen a lot of those guys. Non-stop, right? Like I think it would be a really good time for us to fight to save them as opposed to them being front and center. Yeah. I want to. This has been great. Can I? All right. Yeah. So I want to take a moment to justify the 13-year-old could do better point that I made earlier. I'm going to ask. I asked you this earlier. Did you know what would happen when they shattered the helm of the Lich King? Did you know, that's going to open up a portal to Shadowlands?
I can tell you what I think would happen. I think what would happen is, the Helm of Domination grants the Lich King dominion over the Brainless Scourge.
It is in the name.
So, in my mind, if you break it, then all of a sudden you've just got this wash of undead running over Azeroth, consuming everything like a plague of locusts.
Yeah.
That's what I think would happen.
Well, you're wrong. I'm wrong. We're all wrong. Not what happened. Not what happened. It turns out that helm that is the Helm of Domination actually keeps us from the afterlife. That's the only thing.
It's the Helm of opening the afterlife, or it's the Helm of Domination?
Oh,
I see.
You're
confusing to me.
You're overthinking this. It's. I can't even justify this. I think they needed to get us to Shadowlands.
Yes.
And again, I think they wanted to go to Shadowlands so that they could bring back the old people, and that'll get players playing. That'll get people excited. But yeah, they needed a mechanism. Like, what could possibly be done to justify, opening up this portal? And they're like, oh, the Lich King. But the Lich King's only been around for
20 years.
The local time of Warcraft happened.
Since Warcraft 3.
Right,
and that was it.
And so I think if they had done this differently, if instead the Lich King was this creature that had been around since day one, sort of like a Grim Reaper type, like every time there's a huge battle he shows up.
They've teased this jailer character from Shadowlands.
Okay, yes, some sort of entity that has kept the dam in the damned place since day one. If he had always been around, then shattering that guy's helmet would absolutely open up the portal. Or if Arthas and the demons possessing him had corrupted that thing, that would also get me there. But the fact that just this dude showed up, didn't exist before Arthas was perverted into the entity known as the Lich King, is now the one who maintains the line between life and death. It comes out of nowhere.
Right. Yeah, we have no. That is not the 10 years of lore that they've set up around that artifact.
Mm-mm.
Right.
Mm-mm. And the sword's the artifact too. That's the part that threw me. I was like, What's the? I didn't even.
So the helm.
I didn't even know the helm did anything.
The helm was what's his face? That orc warlock. They put
Are you looking for Gul'dan?
not Gul'dan, the other one.
The other orc
The
warlock.
other one, whatever his name is, the original Lich King.
Mm-hmm.
They put his essence into the helm, threw it on the frozen throne. Arthas went up.
Where
there.
was he?
He was on the frozen throne.
Where was he being the original Lich King?
So he was on Draenor.
On Draenor, there was a Lich King.
No, there wasn't a Lich King.
Okay.
Burning Legion took his soul, put it in a crown, put it on Azeroth to become the Lich King. They created the Lich King.
So this is just a dude who's been around.
He's been around, yeah. What the heck was his name?
I had no
he was
idea.
in,
So
he was on Draenor.
hold on. So Arthas picks up Frostmourne.
Arthas is manipulated by the Lich King to pick up Frostmourne.
I thought there was a different demon in Frostmourne.
Yes, but Frostmourne is all the souls of those it has killed in the past.
Okay, but the sword talked to him.
Yes. Being manipulated by the Lich King.
So you're saying there's a man who lives in a crown.
Yes. An orc.
There's an orc who lives in a crown who convinces a human to pick up a sword of the Burning Legion.
I gotta read my encyclopedia again.
Please.
It's all.
No,
we're destroying our credibility here. We should not talk about stuff we don't know.
I'm not. The point that I'm trying to make is that as an unwashed mass, an envoy of the unwashed mass, I recall the sword being the evil thing that corrupted him. Okay.
But the sword, I believe, was a mechanism.
I'm just
from the Lich.
I'm just saying that had they shattered the sword, this would have all made a lot more sense to me. Yeah. And I could have been. I'd like to think I'm up on my wild lore, but clearly I'm not. So we've established that the way they did things doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
The throwaway of the void doesn't make any sense because now I'm not sure what they're going to do to top it because again, pretty sure the void was the thing that Sargeras lost to. Is that am I accurate here?
That's what he's fighting against.
Yeah. So why would they just toss that unless they're just giving us another void? In which case, you just did that. What are you doing? I guess.
And again, in the lore, in the books, we've got the old gods who've been causing shenanigans on Azeroth for a million years.
Mm-hmm.
But above them, there are sort of these void lords out there, the ultimate void force.
Oh, so you're saying above void gods is
above
void,
the old gods.
Above the old gods,
void lords.
Void lords.
Old gods are the void creatures infesting Azeroth.
Okay.
And then void lords, I think, are the be all.
So that's what we're really fighting.
That's what we're really fighting.
This is the dark side.
The dark side, yeah.
Well, so I guess maybe they thought that it would make sense to do the void gods as
Lords.
the void lord. No,
old gods.
The old gods as the transition into fighting the void lords. But the implementation just kind of sucks.
Yeah. Again, I think what we sort of got at is for both Warlords of Draenor and Shadowlands is the game designers came up with a setting that they think would interest players, a setting that's old or the side adventure, and then shoehorned in a way to get us from A to B. How do we get to that setting?
Yeah.
We time travel with Garrosh, break him out of prison.
Right.
Or for the new one...
No, this was a meeting. Someone was like, how do we
get to the Shadowlands?
And someone was like...
Sylvanas will crack a crown open. We don't have lore to justify that, but we'll shoehorn it in.
She's going to crack a what? Just like...
Crack a gold one.
Arthas' crown? Why doesn't she use the Boy King's crown?
Because he's not the... I mean, it's true. You know, the Lich King's crown, the Helm of Domination is not supposed to connect to the afterworld or whatever.
Yeah, but they did it. And now here we are. Okay, so how are they going to fix it? How are they going to fix this one? How do we salvage Shadowlands?
How do we salvage Shadowlands? Again, in my mind, the stakes are very low because we're fighting for the Shadowlands. And again,
I think in the trailer, they're like the fate of the whole universe.
It is
on this,
but I don't care about that because I've never seen it before. It's like it's a concept. I'm fighting for heaven. I'm fighting for hell. Cool in theory, but again, you know, it's much more human and mortal, I guess, to fight for Azeroth. It's something that we all truly care about, right? Mm-hmm. Where do we go from here, right? What they maybe can do is we go to the afterlife, the Shadowlands. We we learn all this stuff and we fight back and we save the Shadowlands. And then, my assumption is it turns out that the big bad Void Lords are the ones who have created whatever problem is affecting the Shadowlands. And then the next expansion will be fighting.
That's the other thing. The only thing that I think we're making a lot of good points. The only thing that I could push back on is that, in some boardroom somewhere, someone could have said this exact thing. Here's what it should be. And someone was like, I'm going to need you to stretch all that way out into 7 more games.
But here's my problem with that. They could have turned like both of the patches of Battle for Azeroth into their own expansions.
Yes.
You shove the Naga, you shove the Queen.
That's a very good point.
The ancient High Elven Queen who's been living underwater for 1,000,000 years.
Yeah.
And you shove the final Old God, who we've been hinting at for 20 years, into 2 patches at the end of a shitty expansion.
That's a great point.
Like,
that feels a lot more like, what do we put in here?
I think that's what it is.
What are we going to do?
Battle for Azeroth, they were scrambling for content, so they shoved what they could in, and now Shadowlands, they're like, someone was like, yo, we got to slow it down, partner.
Let's take Drustvar.
And turn it into an expansion.
Into an expansion.
Yeah, basically.
The fact that the Guardian of Tirisfal is such a throwaway plot at this point bums me out.
Did that ever show up ever in WoW besides the flashbacks? Or was it only in the RTSs?
Did the Kirin Tor elect a new Guardian? Did that not happen? If that didn't happen, they should do that. Because, of course they should do that.